Right, so last week I was very much underground. Go check out that last video if you haven't seen it already. This week I'm in somewhat nicer, greener environments here in Balra, New South Wales, checking out the Geely EX5. This is the first car to land in New Zealand from, well, the first car since the last time they happened, but we'll ignore that, from the Geely brand. They are a giant. You already see their cars around the place in the form of basically Polestars, Volvos, Zeekrs. They're all under this one big umbrella of Geely. It truly is an automotive giant. And the first car here is an electric car, though they have been very much at pains to point out that they are not an electric car brand. Well, they're starting with this. There will be plug-in hybrids, and even potentially standard old ICE vehicles coming from them. Now, in New Zealand, the Giltrap Group has the rights to the brand, so it's going to sit next to some pretty impressive nameplates. Can it stand up to them? Let's have a look around. Now, size-wise, this thing is in that kind of small to medium SUV space. So if on the tail of the tape, it sits between the BYD Atto 3 and the Leapmotor C10. So definitely a size down from the likes of the Tesla Model Y. Now, if you take those two cars, the Atto 3 and the Leapmotor, that's exactly where they're saying they're going to target the pricing for this vehicle. We don't know what that is yet, but I expect it's going to be in that high $50,000 range, depending on which model you get. Two versions are going to be coming to New Zealand, the Complete and the Inspire. Now, the Complete is a little more basic, despite the name. I don't entirely get it, but not by much. It gets smaller wheels, it lacks the glass roof, the seats aren't so flash and you lacks an electrical adjustment, and it misses out on the full top spec stereo in this one. But yeah, they're two relatively complete vehicles. Now let's start at the front. Now, the bonnet front here, it's very electric car look, isn't it? You've got this Geely badge, no grille other than a kind of cooling area down here. Under the bonnet, no frunk. And the layout is a little interesting in that there's quite a bit of space in there, but they seem to have a lot of pipes and it all going around all over the place. Some of them are a little bit concerned about if someone was to lean on them. But it's also a hint that this is a platform that is shared with some vehicles that do have a petrol motor floating around under there. The electric motor itself, we'll talk about it more when we drive, is really interesting in itself though. It's what they call an 11-in-1 concept, which means it has all the various items, the motor itself, the inverter, the control systems, the charging in one really compact unit. They say it's smaller than any others out there and more efficient in its power use as well. So a really impressive piece of technology there, but come on guys, just rejig it a little bit to get a frunk in there. We have LED headlights in the front here. And as we come around the side, we have these wheels. Now on this model, they are 19s, smaller on the Complete. We have a charging port here. Now, reasonable charging speeds. It is CCS2, 100 kilowatt DC, 11 kilowatt AC. The 11 kilowatt AC is a bit rare in that space. You're only going to see about 6.6 on an Atto, so that is a nice addition to have. Further round, wing mirrors, cameras everywhere, as is usually the case these days. Hoppy door handles. Please, guys, just give us some normal door handles. They're getting a little bit frustrating. Now, they have roof rails on it as well, and they've put these roof bars on here. Not necessarily my choice, but nice to know that accessories like that are already about and available for the vehicle and working. Now, if we come through the back, I really like these tail lights when they're lit up. The back of the car, I think, looks a little bit plain when it's not got the lights on, so they've done a great job putting them on now. But yeah, lovely big LED light bars that go completely across the vehicle. If we open the boot, electric tailgate on the Inspire, not on the Complete. And it's a decent boot. It doesn't look that great to start off with, and I'm going to take out this accessory panel here so I can show you. But we have a boot floor that lifts up and slide down into a lower position there. But then when you lift this up, we have a massive, massive tub. We saw a big tub in the C-Line 7. This is bigger. I think this is probably going to be the closest one to the big tub in the back of the Tesla Model Y. And that is fantastic. You can put so many things in there. Even if the main boot itself, I think it's probably close to the Atto 3, if not quite as big, but still an impressive space. Right, let's go check out the interior. Inside the Geely EX5. Now, I will say that in this segment, this does feel like the best built car you can get. The interior feels really well screwed together. The same for the exterior. It's a really nice place to be. You've got to reach around quite low to get to the kind of scratchy plastics, and even the ones that are there feel pretty reasonable quality. But the dash top is all soft touch, the steering wheel's wrapped in synthetic leather, so this is all soft along here, and this material here, it's so much better than piano black. There is a little bit of piano black in the car, I'll forgive them for that, but no piano black here means that it actually looks clean for more than about 15 seconds at a time. Now you have a big 15.6-inch screen. It uses Geely's own Flyme OS, which we'll look at a little bit more when we go for a drive, but a really nice bright screen, nice and reachable, easy to use, has all the usual functions, and it also powers this 1000-watt Flyme sound stereo that is really good. I found Chinese cars have reasonable stereos, but they're generally quiet-ish. This one has some real thump to it, so it's great to see. Somewhat hidden in ventilation across the dashboard, a heads-up display, again we'll look at that later, and a screen in front of the driver here for all your crucial information. The steering wheel is quite a unique design as well. It's kind of squarish, just the center bar here. You've got buttons on here that you can actually program and change around to do what you want to do. Same for this dial. This dial you can set to use for your media volume or all sorts of different things in the vehicle. And you've got some nice little hotkeys here for the ventilation system. Now we have cup holders here, which sit on an angle, a little bit different. And if I pull my phone out, we have a wireless charger tucked down in there, which is great because your phone can't really go very far there. It's quite handy to have. No wireless charging on that side, so it's only a single unit, but it's nice. You can still store your phone there. Glove box down here. It's a nice big size, but don't look at that now, camera, because there's random stuff in there. Now, the passenger seat on the Inspire has this big leg rest, and it can actually lean out and become an armchair, a bit like what we've seen in Hyundai and Kia cars. So that's nice to have at what is a significantly lower price point. And the driver's seat, electrically adjustable. You can save all your settings up through the screen. It pulls back when you want to get in the car. Nice and handy from that perspective. And then down here, more storage, USB charging, USB-A and USB-C. A pretty pleasant interior, and it does have a glass roof with a shade, though annoyingly there's no buttons up here to control it. You've got to do it through the screen or the voice functionality, which we'll try a little bit later on as well. Right, let's check out the back seat. Right, now for our very unique can it fit a Richard test? And the answer is yes. Again, really comfortable seats, plenty of space back here. We have an armrest over here, isofix points on either side. This has to be a winner for headroom. I mean, I'm very tall on the torso. This hat's quite tall as well. Not even touching the side. That's a pretty rare thing, certainly in this class. I will say the actual leg room, I think, falls slightly short of the 803, and that's interesting because the tape measure suggests otherwise, and I think what it comes down to is these amazingly comfortable big armchairs from the front. They are quite thick, and I do wonder if perhaps that just eats up a tiny little room, or maybe perceived room, by being just a bit bigger and bulkier. I'm not uncomfortable. There is plenty of space. And look, there's some handy touches down here as well. There's a vent down here for the rear. They can direct to either side. Again, USB-A and USB-C. A little bit of storage down the bottom. Nice door pockets. And yeah. Again, only the tiniest little bit of piano black. And there's one little touch here that I haven't seen in any other car, but I think it's going to be really handy. And that's down here. Click the handle. There's a big storage drawer. First off, you've got a little key fob there for this car. This one's a bit taped up because it's got the number plate on it. But theoretically, you will have a phone app for this kind of stuff in the future. There is no need to push a start button. That's just once you get in, the car is up and running. I'll turn the temperature down there a little bit because we're in Sydney and it's a little bit on the warm side. Because it's on the warm side, you do have some options, of course. This car has a max cold function, which I rather like. Fast cooling. That's going to probably mean you're going to hear a lot of wind noise at the moment, though it's actually not as bad as that. It's just microphones and all that. But if you really want to get cool, you can use the seat ventilation. You've also got heating. You can set it to auto. You've also got massaging functions with wave, step, serpentine, shoulder, waist, and crawling
modes. Now I just want the seat ventilation on, medium, take off the fast cooling function. Right, so driving away, you have, now the other creature comfort about this car, which is handy, is on this level, the Inspire model, you have automatic driver's seat. You can set that in the screen, save your functions. So if I go and touch here, it's going to let me save that. Right, start the car, and to go away, you just simply use your indicator stalk there, like so many EVs these days. I guess it's not really indicator stalk, and drive away. Now, at low speeds, I'll see if I can get a recording, but it does have a rather peculiar song that it sings to warn people of its approach. It's very chimey, very lullaby, but different, I guess, in its own right. I mean, not everything needs to be a little low-level hum. The indicators come out of the side that you are turning to, which is a nice touch as well, I think. Quite pleasant. Quite pleasant. You can hear that music still going on. So what are we working with? It is a front-wheel drive car, 160 kilowatts of power, I believe 310 newtons of torque. I'll put that down the bottom just to confirm. And it's pretty good. This thing is about 10 kilograms lighter than a 60 kilowatt hour Atto 3. So it's, considering it's a slightly bigger vehicle in some ways, it's pretty sprightly. Oh, we are going to get some bongs there. The performance feels good. They've certainly moderated the application of the torque. It tries not to spin the wheels when it's at low speeds. Waits for you to be up moving a little bit before, I think, for it pulls out all of that torque. It's a really interesting drivetrain. They call it an 11-in-1 unit. So all the various functions are in one package, from the battery control, the charging, everything's in this one unit that's quite a bit smaller, quite a bit lighter, and apparently cheaper to manufacture than what traditional or other EV drivetrains are. So some pretty interesting thinking there. Though it hasn't done one thing, as we saw earlier, there's no frunk. So I don't know why we've got a smaller drive unit at the front, but no frunk. A little bit disappointing from that perspective. Now, ride. Now, they've talked a lot about ride today on the first drive experience here of the Geely EX5. When people drove it initially, or Australian journalists drove it initially in China, they felt it was far too soft, and Geely obviously really took that to heart, and they've had the engineers working in Australia for a Australia and New Zealand specific tune for the suspension. So what they have done is firmed it up quite a lot, but it's still quite comfortable. It doesn't really let a lot through from the road, or at least not enough that it's going to be uncomfortable. I've found the ride in this quite pleasant, and in Australia they have these quite rough concrete panelled roads, and it handled those really well. Now, I'm not quite sure that they've finessed the suspension enough, though. There's one thing to firm up suspension, but I think there's also work potentially to be done around dampening rates and so forth. It just feels, and it feels too firm, but it just feels like there's a smidge of refinement left to come from this car. Having said that, I would prefer this setup over the rather spongy soft setup we get in the BYD Atto 3. I think this is definitely a preferable example of what you can do with these vehicles. Now, the steering is actually really nice and linear, particularly in sport mode. I wouldn't say there's a lot of response, a lot of feedback, but it's nice and quick. And I was quite pleased at how it felt, particularly through a twisty set of driving we were doing. Not sports car steering, but I think pretty good for a city runaround, essentially, that's going to be comfortable enough for the open road. It is a particularly efficient drivetrain. So I'll put the actual claim rates underneath, but for most of the day where we were trawling through a mix of motorway and city areas, a little bit of open road, we were seeing down at about 14.5 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. That's a solid effort for a car like this. And, you know, getting closer down to what we see from Hyundai's, you know, they're particularly noted for their efficiency. This is doing okay. Now, I'll be interested to see what it's like when we get it out into a more free-flowing environment. Today we were on a very pre-planned drive route, and I know that this car, which I don't think was necessarily doing the same route that we were, and certainly wasn't being driven how we drove, is sitting at about 20 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. So, you know, Your mileage may vary, but so far I've found it a pretty efficient vehicle. Now, the Geely EX5 really goes to the head of the class, and this applies to both models for driver assistance functions. It has got a very long list of all sorts of things, but if we look at the stuff that's a bit unusual in this class, this has a really advanced lane keeping system. So I can see down here using a vision system, all the other vehicles around me. That's not hideously unusual. The Leap motor has this, but this can actually do really strong at staying in its lane and driving comfortably without seesawing, as so many of these cars do on the motorway. Less so on single track roads, but that's not unusual. Even the best struggle with some of these single lane Kiwi and Australian roads. One thing this car does that nothing else in the class does is automatic lane changes. So you're driving along on the motorway, you want to change lanes, all you need to do is indicate, just make sure you're putting a little bit of resistance in that direction into the steering wheel, and it will do the lane change for you. And it feels quite natural doing it. Again, you've got to go up some fairly high-end cars to get that feature. And to be honest, I struggled to get into work that well in New Zealand or Australia in those other vehicles, but this one today, straight off, not a problem at all. So a really nice touch there. Similarly, if you are coming up to an incident or something, it can actually help you steer around the accident using its own system. And it can also vary the torque to the front wheels to assist in emergency situations as well. So that is a really nice touch. Now, we don't know what the safety rating of the vehicle is going to be. I would anticipate a 5-star. I believe they're anticipating an NCAP 5-star as well. You've got 7 airbags, including a center airbag. Said that long list of safety features. And they're pitching that they've put a lot of effort into making sure that the body shell of this vehicle is strong, including a really high result in their own testing of how much the front of the car deforms and absorbs energy. So handy to see, well, it looks great to see that they're really putting some thought into the safety of this vehicle. In this model, it's 16 speakers through the Flyme sound system. The whole system's called Flyme, their system. 1,000 watts. A lot of the Chinese stereos I've had so far have sounded pretty good, but they generally don't go that loud. This one does actually go reasonably loud. And on this model, there is a subwoofer in the boot, vehicle speed, compensation, all those kind of things. And you can vary the vehicle sound. And then your connection. So you can have a hotspot going, a 4G SIM in them. We're not exactly sure of the terms of what data you're going to get with that. These cars yet aren't connected, so we've been using a hotspot to try them out. And then various other personalization settings, your maintenance repair, all that kind of stuff. So if we go down here to the list of apps, we've got various options. You got your Bluetooth music, USB music, gallery. We've got the access to the 360-degree camera. Not going to show now because we're going too fast. And then we've got an app store which you've got internet connection. You can get things like Spotify, TuneIn Radio, a few others. They've promised more will come. Now, what will also have to wait and will come eventually is Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. They are not coming at launch, and we've been told that Apple CarPlay will come in July, Android Auto a bit later. A little bit disappointing they're not here at launch, but hopefully they do come when scheduled, and also that there's broader app availability, because I think those are really important to the potential success of a vehicle like this.
When it comes to vehicle to load, the Geely EX5 has a strong offering with 3.3 kilowatts of energy available, or you can even charge another vehicle at up to 6 kilowatts. The only problem? You have to pay extra for the adapters. There's also a camping mode, enabling climate control to stay on all night should there be no room at a proper inn.
Right, so the Geely EX5, am I impressed? Very much so. Now, there are a few little bugs, as we've mentioned, to fix. I think there's a little bit of tweaking still to be done to the software, and I think the handling could just do with a little bit of a second look. But as we mentioned, Geely have been listening. They've already made changes, and I imagine as this car gets to market and they get more feedback, we'll see. But overall, as a first effort in the market, excellent, and I can't wait to see what they bring next. Don't forget, like and subscribe down below, and we'll catch you soon for more great videos.